Howdy, howdy, howdy. Rodfather 916. Um, as I was watching the Sunday shows, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott was walking back his statement about America being racist. He didn't deny it, but he did admit that in his lifetime he has been stopped more than a dozen times for driving while black. I was just telling a friend of mine, sort of probably in the last 24 hours, I would love to go to his town hall in South Carolina. I'm not a citizen of that state and I wouldn't have anything to say, but I'd like to hear his explanation to those black and Latinos and whites who supported him, but particularly black and Latinos who supported him, who heard through their support, people called him nigger. People who were upset that a black man was running in a position that was always held by a white man and didn't want anyone other than a white person in that position. And so it would be curious. I would buy a ticket to go to South Carolina to hear that. I'd like to hear his explanation. Because we live in a country where the federal government had to stop in because states, cities, and other municipalities would prevent us from going to school, preventing us from voting, preventing us from holding jobs, for preventing us from living in certain neighborhoods, preventing us from getting loans, preventing, and you say this is not a racist America. I always tell everybody, if you go to Atlanta and you haven't been to the King Center to look at the laws, the individual laws on the books from states that had to be overridden by the federal government for us and other people of color just to have basic rights, it's mind-boggling. It brought me to tears. So I'm just curious what he has to say. I am sure not everyone will abandon him. I am sure there will be people who will support him for his reelection. But there will be certain people that he insulted, and I'm just curious what his explanation will be, because unlike the TV audiences where he's trying to save face for his entire party, what is he going to say to his constituents who've actually voted for him, who stood in line, who campaigned for him? I'm curious about that. I'm going to put a pin into that and move on to another thing. I have a question. Is there more racism, or because everyone has a cell phone and they're all directors, we see more images of racism on social media? I'm curious about that. I'd like to know your thoughts. Today on Facebook, I saw this lady being handcuffed in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm not sure how old the video is. That's really important because some of these videos, they circle around. They're several years old, but it's new to them. And that person sends it to 800 of his closest friends. But I found interesting this woman who was relatively well-dressed, and she's well-kept. She was spitting on Muslim customers at the CVS and saying racist things to them. And so the police were called, and I'm not sure if the officer was black or Hispanic, but he had no love for her. And she was sort of outraged because she was being handcuffed. She didn't scream or cuss the people out, but she had words, and the officers weren't feeling her. And as human nature, she called on Jesus. And she went so far as to admit that she was a Christian and that she was a member of Calvary Center, either somewhere in South Florida, or it could be in Fort Lauderdale. And she actually mentioned the pastor's name, who is now probably gone into hiding, is there a way we can keep her from coming to the church? But I found it interesting. And towards the end, the family that she insulted didn't want her to go to jail. And so she sort of half-heartedly apologized, but it really wasn't, because she was a victim. You know, if they hadn't existed or said something to her, she wouldn't have had to spit on them. You got to love people like that. And then they come back at you and, I'm a Christian. You are? What church do you belong to? Because I want to make sure I don't go there, okay? I need to talk to your pastor. Is this what your pastor teaches? But I'm curious what your thoughts are. So I'm going to end with that. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I want to hear what you have to say. A lot of you leave comments every place but YouTube. I'd like you, if you can, to leave it on YouTube channel, but I read everything that you say, and we don't always agree. And that's okay, because that's sometimes how I learn. I hope you want to keep learning, because sometimes in disagreements you learn. So hit that subscribe button. I'm in the state capital of Sacramento, California. Sacramento. Wishing you love, joy, and happiness. Rodfather 916 out. Please be well.